North here and accept the amendment agenda for the August 1st, 2019 special council meeting to include a presentation on agreements held with other municipalities and a closed session meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have Paul. Do I have a seconder? Anita? All in favor? Carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Seeing none, we'll move on. We have no public meeting or hearings today. We have a report 5.1, presentation of agreement held with other municipalities, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the presentations dated August 1st, 2019 regarding the agreements held with other municipalities for information purposes. Do I have a mover?
Probably.
Yeah, and then we're gonna do it. You wanna do it first?
I would prefer we
Okay.
probably do it first before we do the motion.
Okay, we'll hold off on that one then. So before we go into the presentations, I would like to thank the council and staff for their help on this. The staff has really worked hard on this, and you're going to get a fair good showing of what's actually happening between ourselves and our fellow neighbors. And having said that, after that, we'll move forward in negotiations with our neighbors. And again, I want to thank the council for waiting so long. It has taken a while, but when you see the presentation, which does not cover nearly as much as you would believe, you'll understand why it's taken a while. Having said that, I turn it over to Dwayne to get this rolling.
Yeah, thanks, Reeve. So just as Reeve has indicated, the presentation is built around various departments. So each department head is going to present the agreements that are applicable to their particular department. So it does, one department will have agreements with several municipalities, and I think you'll see that. And just in terms of, I'd like to reiterate Reeve Bailey's comments in terms of, and thanking the staff. It has been a larger undertaking, just in terms of going through all the material, but I think that I'm hoping that the information that we're bringing forward provides you with what it is that you need in terms of moving forward. So I guess at this point, the first department we're going to look at is Public Works and Facilities. So if the Reeve is in agreement, we'll call Sean forward to start.
Morning, Reeve Bailey, members of council. Okay, so I guess we'll just dive right into this. Maybe we will. Okay, as Dwayne had mentioned, there's a number of different agreements that we have in place. So I'll just, and these are in no particular order, but we'll just start picking away at them from the start until we get through them. Okay, so one of the first ones we identified was a Cornon Street Water Main Extension Agreement. The agreement was made under bylaw 83/2008. It's between North Huron and Morris Turnberry for the construction of 300 meters of water main that extends from the end of Cornon Street along the municipal boundary line to the water main on Highway 86. So, and you can actually see in the drawing there where it runs, basically through an agricultural or an undeveloped area. Purpose of this was to provide additional water flow specifically for the purposes of cross-border servicing. It doesn't ultimately service additional properties or any properties of any significance for the township. Cost for the installation was approximately $50,000, which was split 50-50. Ownership and responsibility, and you'll hear this theme as we go through this a few times. Ownership and responsibility for ongoing maintenance is to North Huron. And this, again, was completed specifically for the purpose of providing additional flow for the servicing of Morris Turnberry properties on 86. This next one, was there any questions with that? Sorry, or shall I just go through it?
If you want to just continue, and if somebody does, they can put their hand up.
The next one is a simple one, installation of Morris Turnberry hydrants. I believe that there's 6 or 5 hydrants associated with the agreement, and there's an annual maintenance fee of $400, which basically covers the cost to have Veolia do the maintenance and check the hydrants. Again, the hydrants are the property of North Huron. Lease of Belgrave Community Center. Okay, so this lease agreement is between the Township of North Huron and Belgrave Community Center, which is an incorporated not-for-profit corporation. It's a 10-year agreement that expires next May 17th. There's a rental of $1,000 a month, plus the equivalent of tax and insurance, which is adjusted annually. The Belgrave Community Center is exclusively responsible for the operation and maintenance of the facilities and the grounds. Township of North Huron pays the Belgrave Community Center an annual fee of $34,000, which is adjusted for CPI, and that's in recognition of the service that group is providing for EW residents. Township of North Huron also pays the Belgrave Community Center an annual capital contribution of $10,000, which is adjusted for CPI, and that's to be used for capital expenditures associated with the upkeep of the facility. And I believe, Donna, that just accumulates in a fund, correct? Unless they spend it.
Yeah, they accumulate it.
Right. The Belgrave Community Center is responsible for all utility and operating costs, as well as the maintenance of an insurance policy which holds North Huron harmless. And then Morris Turnberry makes a voluntary contribution to the Belgrave Community Center. Now, over the past 3 years, that has represented an average of $5,847 a year. It's been escalating slightly year on year, and last year they actually paid $6,120 in 2018, according to our records. So really, this lease is set up so that it's very much a hands-off. We don't worry about the building. They take care of it. They operate it. We just contribute. Okay, the Blythe-Hullett landfill agreement with Central Huron. This is an agreement between Central Huron and North Huron for the ongoing post-closure operation of the Blythe-Hullett landfill. The landfill is situated in Central Huron and jointly owned by Central and North Huron. It's overseen by the Blythe-Hullett Landfill Board, which is populated by members from both councils. Cost associated for the operation is, I've got it here that it's shared 50-50. It's actually shared 40.6, 49.4. So it's a very close to 50-50 calculation between the two municipalities. Year to date for 2019, we've spent $89,768.07, which, as council is aware, was paid towards the securing of that the CAS, the Contamination Attenuation Zone. There is one small portion of the CAS that has not been secured by both townships, and that's the part that's owned by the province. So, and it's very, very small. It's only a few acres. It's actually the rail trail that goes over, and it's owned by Infrastructure Ontario. So the total budgeted for that CAS procurement was $95,177. And then North Huron has a share of annual monitoring and maintenance, which, as council's aware, all of these landfills require biannual reporting and annual monitoring. Our cost is running at approximately $18,225 per year. This was an agreement that there's not much to it, but we put it in the list anyways. It was a quick claim land transfer agreement. It's an agreement between North Huron and Morris Turnberry to clear up an erroneously registered title for lands that were owned by Westcast. The property was registered on title as a North Huron property, when in fact it was located in Morris Turnberry. So there was an agreement put in place just to go through the legal process of moving the title. Like I said, not much to talk about there. The Victoria Street Bridge Agreement, that's an agreement between North Huron and Morris Turnberry. We share costs of ownership and all the maintenance and repair costs associated with the Victoria Street Bridge. And it's an equal sharing. To date, it's been working fairly well. We determine what's needed on an annual basis based on the OSIMs and just the ongoing maintenance. We work with Morris Turnberry and share resources to just take care of the bridge. It's very straightforward. Okay, the Belgrave water system. This is an interesting one. Agreement is between North Huron and Morris Turnberry for the provision of water to the North Huron side of Belgrave, which everybody's aware is serviced by wells, a well system that's owned by Morris Turnberry. The agreement is significantly different from what everybody's accustomed to in terms of the cross-border servicing agreement. Much different. It specifically focuses on the connections to the system. It outlines all sorts of requirements to disconnect private wells, permanent inspections. It requires the installation of backflow prevention. When you look at the agreement, it very much seems like it's focusing on the resident and the homeowner, as opposed to an agreement between two townships or municipalities. There's fines for contravention of the agreement that are indicated in there, and then it does speak to their fees. The one-time capital charge for a connection in 2014 was $6,975. And then there's fixed service fees that are identified in the agreement. Although, as Donna can attest, we take care of that billing, and then we bill our Belgrave residents separately. So they don't pay, the individual homeowners do not pay to Morris Turnberry, they pay to North Huron. Okay, so that's, but the big thing to note there is it is a much different agreement in terms of the way it's configured.
Just curious then, just a question, the $6,000 when they pay that for hookup, if it's on our side, do they pay it to us or it goes to us?
Goes to Morris Turnberry.
Or they pay it to us and then we would turn it over.
Oh, okay. But Chris?
Yeah, through you, Reeve. Sean, just a general question. So this is for $7,000 that had, for all the homeowners in both townships to pay that, they, contributed to the cost of the system, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, so whether it's on their side or our side, doesn't matter. What happens when there's new development? So the system's paid for here by these folks, and then there's new folks coming in.
Right.
What happens?
Well, I believe they're charged the same amount.
Where does the money go then if the system's already been paid for?
Presumably it's capital
Theoretically.
or into a reserve.
It does need to be clarified for sure.
Yeah.
But that's, we got into that. We had 2 residences that tied in recently, plus some of the new construction, and they incurred the same costs.
Mhm. Well, it wouldn't be fair if they didn't incur. I was just concerned about, okay, what's this extra lump of money going to do?
Well, and again, that kind of circles back to that whole comment that it is a very different agreement than what you might be accustomed to when you look at how our cross-border services agreement, CBSA, is structured. So the next one's a cross-border servicing agreement with Cowbell. It identifies the provision of water services for fire suppression and domestic water services only. It should clarify that we're not providing water for the product that they're producing. We're fire suppression and domestic only. The water line is actually not considered an extension of the distribution system, and rather it's deemed as a service connection from the North Huron system. North Huron again assumes sole responsibility for the maintenance and repair of the service line to the property line. The agreement outlines the requirement for a water meter that establishes fees and charges that are consistent with the cross-border servicing agreement that we have with Morris Turnberry. And it also established Central Huron as a guarantor on the account for any amount that's found owing in excess of 6 months, which is unique. Central Huron originally contributed to the lesser of $43,000 or 25% of the overall cost for installation. That was basically their involvement in the tie-in. It's a 20-year initial term with an automatic successive 5-year renewal, and there is no tax sharing provision in place for the cross-connected properties.
Oh, Sean, through you, Reeve. Is there a requirement for the ESTC building that they've purchased to be metered? Because the capability is there of a much larger water connection that could be used at a larger rate if they're with an expansion inverter that they don't already have their wells aren't connected to that building for their process. If they have process in that building, they might connect.
That's a very good point. They have a 4-inch main going in there, and I can't confirm that the 4-inch itself is metered. I think it was metered for domestic purposes only.
That's it for today?
That concludes our presentation for today. Bear with me.
Did that laptop die?
Must have said something I shouldn't have. Sorry about
I think it's died.
This one?
Okay. Yeah, it's not working. Okay, bear with me. I'll see if I can pull this up on. See if this works. Chad, could you text Stu and ask him to bring Howard? Thanks. Okay, everybody's following along on their,
We're ahead of you.
clearly. Okay, the next one is, we'll talk about is the industrial land strategy. And you'll know that as the Arthur and North Street extension right now. Now this was an agreement between, or a program, I guess we'll call it, between Morris Turnberry and North Huron. That was broken into 3 phases, and the whole idea was it was going to provide additional servicing to the industrial lands to the northwest of Wingham. So it was broken out into 3 phases. First phase being now completed, and that was the extension of the water main on North Street up to Arthur Street. And the benefit to the rationale behind this was that it would provide water and sanitary servicing, specifically to Greens, as well as the properties on both sides of of Arthur Street up to basically Greens. So there's a couple of stubs that were pulled off to the Morris Turnberry side, and we pulled a couple of stubs off onto the Biax property as well. So it provided some opportunity for development or growth on both sides. And for that reason, at the time, it was deemed that this would be a 50-50 cost sharing between the two municipalities. Oh, you know what? Just bear with me here. Maybe I can cheat. Something happened. Okay, there we go. Okay, so, and that, of course, that was, we've actually we're in the process of wrapping up final inspection for that project this fall. The second lift of asphalt was put down. The other thing to note as a sidebar, and it's identified in the 2015 presentation, is that where North Huron recovered costs through taxation, Morris Turnberry was looking at recovering costs through the benefiting landowners. That's according to the report anyways, which was just spoke to a bit of a different approach to the project between the 2 municipalities. And you can see on the drawing of the map that it shows the 3 phases. So phase 1 being north to Arthur up as far as Greens. The second phase would be to tie in off of Water Street down to Helena and up that road. And then phase 3 was from the corner of Arthur and North heading, I guess you'd say, west to service additional lands up that way. So that's where, when you look at the land strategy, phase 2 and phase 3 both benefit Morris Turnberry, and thank you for pointing that out, Reeve, but those are not North Huron benefiting phases, and as such, that's not something that would be expected to be cost shared between the two municipalities. And I guess at this point, the only thing that remains is to enter into discussion with that municipality, with Morris Turnberry, if they decide to proceed with those other additional phases. Okay, and then the last one I think I'll talk about today is the cross-border servicing agreement between North Huron and Morris Turnberry. And council's had opportunity, I think in the last special meeting, we spent a little bit more detailed time in detailed discussion surrounding this. But basically, just to remind everybody, this agreement predates amalgamation in one form or another. So it goes back to time immemorial, I guess. But the first formal post-amalgamation agreement that started taking on the shape that we're familiar with now was adopted under bylaw 31/2004. That being said, when you look at that agreement, it's very limited in detail. It was not a whole bunch. I guess it was just the beginning of a formalization of this servicing agreement. And again, as everybody recalls, the agreement permits out of boundary properties to be serviced. And I think it's important to note that the whole idea behind this is that it would permit properties that otherwise would be cost prohibitive to develop to be serviced fairly economically. So otherwise, each of these places would be looking at putting their own well systems, their own septic, if it was even permitted, that sort of thing. So this ties them into the system and allows development to move quickly. The agreement dictates costs associated with the connections, as well as that whole out-of-boundary surcharge for servicing, which equals 150% of what North Huron ratepayers would pay for water and wastewater services. North Huron has full authority surrounding the authorization of new connections to the system. It's important to note. And those decisions would always be made by council based on capacity and our ability to service. One thing to note in the agreement is that North Huron assumes financial responsibility for all the repairs after commissioning. So once the pipes are in the ground and they're commissioned, they become ours, and they're our responsibility to maintain and operate. The agreement itself, as we talked about at that last special meeting, the council consists of a bunch of schedules which speak specifically to water, to sanitary, to the fee structures. There's a schedule in there that talks about protection from disconnection, and then there's Schedule F, which is the one that speaks to soft service cost sharing. And just for the benefit of anybody that's interested, the current commitments under the CBSA are 23 water connections, which total 693.5 cubic meters of our total capacity per day, and 19 sanitary connections, which equal a maximum of 238.7 cubic meters per day. And then on top of that, there's a specific clause in there that speaks to the Braemar Nursing Home, which is billed at an equivalent of 25 residential units. And then the last real point to note is that there's an automatic renewal process. That process and the time frame around that has passed. That automatic renewal was not initiated by either party, and for that reason, the agreement is now open for negotiation and renegotiation, whatever you want to call it. That's all I had for you. If there's not any questions, I'll call on Chad to pitch it for the fire chief, by the looks of it.
I don't see anybody putting their hands up, so we'll move on to the fire agreement.
Thank you very much.
You're up,
Chad, your computer.
Yeah, just leave it.
Page down. Is it on there? Or do you want me to do this?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I think everybody here knows who I am, but I'm representing Chief Bernard today. Bear with me. It's been a crazy week, and I've been thrown into this last minute. So here we go. There's nothing new here. It's pretty straightforward. I think you guys have all seen the presentation, correct? We're part of the Huron County Mutual Aid planning, and mutual aid isn't something that's just in our county. Mutual aid is all over the province. Basically what that is we scratch your back, they scratch our back. So it's not so much for car accidents, it's more for major structure fires and things like that. So if Teeswater needs a tanker, we will send a tanker if they need it, and vice versa. Any questions for that? It's pretty straightforward. No fees with that. Mutual aid agreement with Bruce Person in Wellington is the same, but prior to that, there has to be a discussion with the fire chief or his designate saying that we're leaving our county, going to another county. Automatic aid agreement. This works well with our bordering municipalities, which would be with Howick and South Bruce. And again, that's not for medical calls or car accidents, it's major structure fires, where both will be paged out at the same time so we can get a quick response and a quick knockdown of what's going on. And it does work well. And again, no fees associated with that. Usually the 100-foot aerial truck. This is one that I know I was working with Chief Sparling at the time, but we were trying to make some agreement, but between Marty and I think Dwayne, there's no agreement with it. But just to understand that any structure fire we have, the aerial truck goes, and if we're called for manpower or to assist another department, that's the truck that goes from Wingham, and it'll be Tank 9 that goes from Bly Station. Personally, I think something needs to be done if we're using the aerial truck because the other departments can't reciprocate an aerial truck back, right? So that's something maybe we have to look at in the future.
How many of those sort of trucks are there in the area?
Ours, Goddard, C4. There's not many, and then the next closest would be Listowel.
Okay.
And I think Harrison. So they're not around a lot, so they're that's something we should maybe look at. Dispatch agreement with Owen Sound. I think this is a 2-year contract, if I remember correctly. It's all on the screen how it works out. The 8,395 makes sense. That's the whole dispatch area that we cover. Fire chief services with here in East. This works well. I think we're all familiar with it. It's fairly new. And I must say, while I'm sitting here, this is working very well. I think we could all agree with that. Agreement with here in East to provide fire prevention services. It's right there. Here in East pays the 8-hour day for Mike to work at the maximum of 11,000, and all other expenses are shared equally. And again, that's another service that's working quite well. And this is the breakdown for the fire suppression service with Morris Turnberry, Central Huron, and ACW. The agreement with Morris Turnberry and Central Huron commenced this year for 5 years, but the agreement with ACW ends this year, I believe. Yeah, it ends this year. And then the plan is to have them all come due at the same time. Next slide's the breakdown. Yeah, ACW is still paying from the previous agreement. And under the new agreement, the fee is set based on the weighted property value, and then they pay the expenses on time, or as we go. And there's the breakdown. There shouldn't be anything new to you, I wouldn't think. Questions for that? And that's how the breakdown is. So what is this? Central Huron pays the 81, there's 82,000, and then on top of that, they pay the firefighter wages. It's been a busy year for Central Huron. Same as Morris Turnberry. That's basically it. Yeah, this isn't mine. Finance. Any questions with that?
Any questions from council?
It's pretty straightforward. So.
Yeah. I don't see any, Chad, so thank you very much for your presentation.
Yep, great, thanks.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. So I just have one to talk about. And so this is the boundary adjustment agreement. This bylaw was passed in 2005. And this agreement was for a boundary adjustment to annex approximately 110 acres, which is known as the Willis property, from Morris Turnberry into North Huron effective January 1st, 2006. The agreement sets out a compensation plan or a tax sharing plan to Morris Turnberry, and in exchange then North Huron agrees to the extension of water and sewer to lands on Schedule A, which is that piece at the front, the commercial piece which is not being developed, and the costs of that are to be borne either by Morris Turnberry or the developer of the day. As part of that agreement, the engineer for acting for North Huron had to provide confirmation that we had adequate sewage and water capacity for this extension. And again, we talked about, in the agreement addresses that Morris Turnberry or the developer would be responsible for the proportionate share of replacement cost capacity devoted to Morris Turnberry. And this is all in the future regarding this piece of highway commercial land. The North Huron lands, that 110 acres, will be used for residential use and limited in institutional use. And again, as I said, the lands retained by Morris Turnberry will be developed for highway commercial. So at this time, we don't know, that could be one commercial entity or two. At this point, we don't know how many commercial entities that could be. And so then this just gives you a little bit of a map to show you our residential piece and then the commercial piece at the front for Morris Turnberry. And then when I talk about this tax sharing, so what has happened there, the agreement speaks to that, I'm just going to read you the section in there. So the compensation received by Morris Turnberry will be the equivalent to municipal taxes in each year for the portion of the transferred lands which are not developed as residential and remain agriculture. So as you know, the development known as A2A has not proceeded to development, and there isn't anything built there. So when this agreement went into place, the property was being assessed at the farmland rate, and then it was switched over to the full residential rate because it was no longer met the criteria for the farmland tax rate, meaning that it wasn't Canadian ownership. So that's why it flipped out of, I think for those who have farmland, you know that you have to meet certain criteria to be eligible for the farm tax rate, and they're not eligible. So it flips to full residential, even though it's not developed as residential. So our North Huron tax rate is higher than the Morris Turnberry residential tax rate, and so there's the assessment that you see. So we collect from them $19,757 from the A2A property, and then we turn over the portion of that equivalent to the Morris Turnberry tax rate, which is the $11,094. So we keep $8,662 of that particular property. So that's all I have on that. So
Sorry, Donna, the
Yeah.
question I have though is once that developed land is actually developed, money would just come to North Huron, correct? Once
yeah.
it's fully developed,
yes.
then it's not necessarily agricultural land anymore, or whatever it looks like, that there would be no cost sharing, there would be no tax sharing agreement. That's tax money would come directly from North Huron, and that's it.
Yes, and that's my understanding. The clarification point though that we would need is, as you know, that's supposed to be a phased development.
Yes.
And so the agreement isn't clear as to, okay, what if just phase one goes ahead, then what happens to the other one? So it is a point to be clarified as is the phasing of that development.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions on that? If not, I shall turn it over to next.
Thank you, Don.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. For recreation and community services, we just have a few agreements to go through. So the first of few agreements being like the cross Schedule F, the cross-border servicing agreement with Morris Turnberry. And we also have the agreement with Maitland Valley Conservation Authority and the Avon Maitland School Board. So the first agreement here is we wanted to discuss was the Schedule F of the cross-border servicing agreement. That section of the cross-border service agreement is the one that Sean was referring to as soft services, because it refers to like cemeteries, recreation, and potentially daycare services and things like that. Prior to it being established, the contributions that were received from Morris Turnberry were done on a voluntary basis. They've, over the years, it's been, they've done a couple different things. They've done it based on participants, based on the number of participants or their residents participating in programs and things, and not just programs that North Huron offers, but programs that are offered by minor hockey, baseball, soccer, that type of thing. I understand in the notes and things that it was difficult to come up with that number because you're relying on other organizations to provide that information to you. So a new arrangement was established where they were providing a set amount to municipality. Schedule F does establish that they're going to make annual contributions. And currently the contributions for 2019 are $75,000 towards the operation of the North Huron West Cass facility, and $16,000 towards the Blackman District Community Center, and $17,308 towards the operation of cemeteries. And then there's a $10,000 contingency in there that we use at our discretion. The next agreement is with the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. This agreement is basically for the use of Galbraith Park. The agreement outlines the terms and conditions for that area for the use of recreational use and soccer fields. Galbraith Park is located in Morris Turnberry. It is not in the township of North Huron. Under this agreement, the township is responsible for the Township of North Huron is responsible for the day-to-day administration, maintenance, and operations, and as well as we pay the annual taxes on that property. The term of this agreement is 5 years, and it does expire December 31st, 2021. The next agreement we have is with the Avon-Maitland School Board and the Huron-Perth Catholic School Board. This agreement basically provides reciprocal use of facilities. It also is referred to as community use of schools. So what it entails is that the community has access to the schools for community programs. Our recreation department has access to the schools, and in turn to run our programs, and in turn then they have use of our facilities. So they will, the school boards will bring in swimming programs or skating programs into our facilities. It does set out that there's no fees that will be charged by other parties unless there's some kind of use that occurs outside of the agreement. And what that would be is, for instance, for swimming lessons, they wouldn't be charged for the use of the facility, but if we have to put additional staff on to cover off for the number of children they're bringing in and things like that, there would be a charge for that. It is an ongoing agreement, and it can be canceled by either party by March 15th of any given year. And that concludes our. Sure.
Good question. The offsite activities that are being done in the schools, are they being done there because there isn't room at the complex to facilitate?
Yes, and we don't have necessarily the proper facilities to do it in. For instance, like a karate program and things, or the gymnastics program and things. So we don't have a gymnasium, so we're using like the gym to do that. Karate could possibly be done in the hot stove lounge, but it isn't really a large enough space to do it in based on size.
Couldn't use the banquet hall or the night school hall?
depending on availability, we could look at that and review that with the Knights of Columbus and the agreement and things.
But the Knights of Columbus has full exclusive use of their facility, so it'd have to be scheduled with them, so
That's right,
you're,
It's around them.
it's around them.
yeah. The agreement with the school boards works really well. It's not unique to this municipality, it's all across the province and things. The province actually encourages it. There are times since I've been here, there have been a couple issues that have arisen where they've had some games scheduled down at the complex, and the whole school has come down. So it's caused some extra work on our part, clean up afterward and things, and just even the supervision. But otherwise, it's not it really does provide a benefit to the community to have use to those facilities.
Are we gaining profit from these programs?
From this,
The karate and stuff that's being held in that different?
yeah, that part of it, that's our programs that we offer, and we do charge for those.
The question that I have with regards to this, is it only, so in the summertime? Like, so in summertime, the school is not particularly open. Is it available during the summertime, or is the reciprocation only available during school September to June?
September to June. Other than field usage. It
Right.
allows for their sport field usage.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you very much, Vicki.
Good morning, everyone. All right, shared service agreement for the building department. Most recent bylaw is bylaw 16, 2018. So originally started with a 2-year project, pilot project, 2016. At that time there, the Public Works Department was to be located in North Huron, and the building department would be located in Morris Turnberry. Through a shared service arrangement. The 2-year pilot project ended. Both municipalities agreed to entering an agreement for the building department, and that agreement started January 2018 to December 2022. And both municipalities repealed the previous bylaw. So the shared service agreement, Morris Turnberry and North Huron entered into the agreement. And what we're referencing here is a section of the Building Code Act. And section 3.2 says that each municipality shall appoint a chief building official and such inspectors for enforcement of the act. And section 3.3 relates to joint enforcement for providing joint enforcement within the Building Code Act within the respective municipalities, for providing and sharing costs incurred for enforcement of the act in each municipality, as well as for providing the appointment of a chief building official and such inspectors. General terms of the agreement. So this is indicating what the building department is really looking after through the shared service. So we issue building permits for all buildings, plumbing permits, septic permits. We issue zoning compliance letters. Our department looks after bylaw enforcement, property standards, and we comment on all planning matters in both municipalities. And one other thing here that's not in this agreement, I'm appointed as drainage superintendent for both municipalities as well, but it's not part of the agreement. It's just an appointment by bylaw. Terms of the agreement. So it's from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2022. And it shall be reviewed by both municipalities at that time. Terms of the agreement may be amended from time to time by mutual consent of both municipalities. Financial. Morris Turnberry, North Huron share the costs and expenses for enforcement of the Building Code Act and its regs, and shall be calculated as shown on Schedule A. Schedule A is at the end of the agreement. We will touch base on that. Morris Turnberry, North Huron agree to invoice each other for costs associated for the CBO and building inspector. And the building department shall provide staffing of the CBO or the building inspector at this office. So right now, we do Monday mornings, 9 to 12, Wednesday mornings, same time, 9 till 12. Invoicing is done on a monthly basis. And the chief building official shall prepare with March 1st of each year annual estimates. That should probably indicate by December. It's nice to start the budget process earlier. Procedures, so the chief building official and inspectors will be stationed at the Morris Turnberry Municipal Office and will work from North Huron office. We already spoke of that. Set up at Morris Turnberry office, we essentially can issue permits for North Huron properties from the Morris Turnberry office. We have that access. We can basically do everything from there, aside from the inspections. Offenses, if there's any charges laid under the Building Code Act, any orders, those costs are dealt with each municipality only. There's no sharing of that service. If there's any legal costs associated with each municipality, so they're separate. If there's any charges and fees brought back to the municipality as a successful procedure, that goes directly to that municipality where that offensive statement. Disputes, a committee consisting of the chief building official, North Huron Council, and Morris Turnberry, CAO clerk, in conjunction with both councils. And in the event that the issues cannot be resolved by the committee, then both councils shall appoint an agreed upon mediator. Termination of the agreement. If either parties desire to terminate the agreement, shall have the right to do so at the end of the current year, provided that such party shall have given notice of its intent to the other party not less than 6 months prior to the said year end. And Schedule A. So for the cost of the building services, number one, so 60% of the chief building official's salary and benefits are paid by Morris Turnberry. 40% is paid by North Huron, and all remaining expenses are shared on a 50-50 basis. So I did some calculating on last year, so 2018. North Huron's was utilizing 47% of my time, not 40. And this year was 48. So it's very close, within 7 or 8%. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Chris.
This is sort of, I don't know, when you're obviously using a Morris Turnberry car or vehicle when you're dealing with Morris Turnberry folks. When you're in North Huron, do an inspection or something, do we supply a car to you or?
No. So originally when this building services started, North Huron had a vehicle for the building department, and North Huron had a building inspector under North Huron, and Morris Turnberry had the same. So we have one building department car with Morris Turnberry logo on it. Right now, we don't have a vehicle from North Huron that was put into North Huron's fleet of vehicles. So we use a Morris Turnberry vehicle to do inspections throughout both municipalities.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, my friend.
Okay. Okay.
Morning, Council.
Morning, Val.
So the Childcare Department, we do have an agreement that before and after school. They did a request for proposals at one point, and we applied for the ability to do the before and after school programs at Maitland River. We were awarded that contract. It was to be about a 5-year contract, but they said they likely are gonna just start rolling them over instead of going through that process on a regular basis. There are no fees associated with our agreement with the school board. So because we're in there providing the service for them, the school board was mandated to provide before and after school care, or is encouraged to do that. But they did not want to provide the service on their own, so they did that request. So we're a visitor in the building, but we get the profits and the operational revenue from that program, and we are not billed for using their property. Our early learning site at Sacred Heart has an occupancy agreement with the County of Huron. So up at Early Learning, which is at the Sacred Heart School here in Wingham, we are currently using 2 rooms. One is for our Ontario Early Years programming, and one is for childcare, where we're licensed to provide care for up to 24 children in the room. Over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been no fees associated with that. Originally, when we moved up there, there was a fee associated with being up there, and at some point that got lost in translation as far as what was happening. It was a government initiative, a best start to get children into the school system. So it's only recently in the last year that the Huron-Perth Catholic District School Board had put forward a proposal that we would pay a fee associated with those rooms at Sacred Heart. It's approximately $650. Currently, we're only using 1 room. We are hoping to expand the service to use 2 rooms. The County of Huron has taken the role as the administrator of those leases and agreements for us, because they are doing it in other schools across the counties as well. So we pay it to the County of Huron. And at this point, we haven't received a bill because they haven't initiated doing it. I'm assuming it will be in September, but we'll see when we start getting paperwork for doing that. And we did budget to pay those costs, and it shouldn't be a problem. But they do provide the custodial fees, the heat, the hydro, and all of those things. So it's a very reasonable cost for that use of those properties. We also have childcare fee subsidy agreements with all of our neighboring counties. So we have a purchase of service agreement with Perth County to provide childcare. So if the people live in Perth County, they will pay us a fee if the parents are approved for fee subsidy. So this allows parents who are approved for fee subsidy, if they are using our service, we have an agreement with Perth, Bruce, and Huron County, and they will pay the portion of the childcare fees. We don't have to pay anything to have this agreement with them. And they do the paperwork and the administrative costs of assessing the parents and what they do, or what the parents will be paying. And that's all for mine.
Questions for Valerie? Seeing none?
So we really didn't have anyone lined up, so I will step in. So in terms of, there have been examples from other municipalities in terms of arrangements with various municipalities. So we'll just go through these quickly, just to give you an idea in terms of what others have done out there. So in the city of Owen Sound, they will consider providing water and sewer services to Georgian bluffs if there's a boundary adjustment. So there's an agreed upon pre-arrangement in terms of providing that service if the boundary adjustment was occurred between the two municipalities. Another example is in terms of Goderich and Century Huron. For those who are familiar with, there's the Zayres and Walmart development. That development itself is actually in Century Huron, and Century Huron gets the tax money from that development. But Goderich provides the services to that development. At the time of the development that was done, there was some negotiating with the developer whereby that developer pays taxes to Century Huron, but they also make a special annual payment to Goderich in recognition of the fact that Goderich is providing the water and sewer services for that development. Another example is between Goderich and Central Huron. It was a boundary adjustment that occurred south of Goderich, Deckert Road and Highway 21. Goderich was in need of residential land, and there was an agreement whereby Central Huron agreed to a boundary adjustment, and that land is now, there's a portion of land that is now in Goderich. And at the time that was negotiated, there was a 60-40 tax sharing arrangement that was put into place. And as part of that, Goderich services those lands that are now part of their jurisdiction, but Goderich at that time also agreed to service other lands in Huron, in Central Huron, as part of that arrangement. In Stratford and Perth East, there was a boundary adjustment a few years ago. There was land in Perth East that was transferred to Stratford. In return, Perth East is receiving a percentage of the taxes from that development. The percentage of the taxes is different, depends on whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial. Hanover and West Grey, they have been, I haven't talked to them recently, but they have been trying to conclude a service agreement since 2011, similar to the cross-border servicing agreement that we have with Morris Turnberry. They are encountering some of the same challenges and the issues that we have had. So anyways, they're not any different. Kincardine, they charge a neighboring municipality and their residents a buy-in cost to purchase the capacity. New users buy a share of the reserve account, and that's based on the replacement cost. St. Mary's, Perth South, St. Mary's will extend servicing into Perth South on a developer-led basis. So if the developer asks for the services to be extended, and Perth South agrees to pay 30% of the taxes on assessment or municipal portion to municipality. And another from Perth County, Stratford and Perth South in the county. Stratford annexed land from Perth South for commercial industrial development. Stratford agrees to pay portions of the taxes to Perth South in the county, and there is a shared services agreement in place for that. That's it.
Thank you, Dwayne. Any questions for Dwayne? Okay. So what we've done is we've laid out, oh, sorry, I gotta do the motion first. Okay, the motion is that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a presentation dated August 1st, 2019 regarding the agreements held with other municipalities for information purposes. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin and seconder by Trevor, sorry. All in favor? Carries. So that concludes our open presentation. We're going to go into closed session in a minute, but I just want to again say that it was a lot of work for the staff. We have a lot of great deals with surrounding communities. I do believe we need to tighten up a few as we move forward. And now would be the time to do it because the shared service agreement has expired or will be expiring in September of this year because the previous council did not extend it, take the opportunity to extend it. For what reasons, we don't know. It's not our council. But we have reached out to starting with Morris Turnberry to see if we could sit down and start having discussions. I'm a true believer that if we all work together, we all prosper together, it will be a good place. It is a good place, but it will be a better place. So that's what we're going for. We've already put a committee together with Anita, myself, and Trevor to meet with Morris Turnberry, and we're waiting on a response. Having said that, I'm going to have the Council Township of North Huron hereby proceed at 10:00 a.m. to an in-camera session closed to the public to discuss the following. A position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instructions to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local boards, cross-border agreements. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin, and I have Chris. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much. Let's take a 2-minute break.